Good evening, everyone. I, Kalpana Chaudhary, on behalf of SAS Women of Raipur and the entire Prabha Khetan Foundation family, welcome you all to another online session of the Right Circle in our city. SAS, an initiative of Prabha Khetan Foundation, is a conglomeration of women from all walks of life who contribute in their own way and inspire others for the betterment of society. SAS women have their presence in a number of cities now. They, with their firm local presence, have proven to be a strong arm of the Prabha Khetan Foundation. Prabha Khetan Foundation has worked relentlessly over the years to promote literature, arts, and culture and bring it to the forefront of our society. The foundation has its presence not only pan-India but even abroad. The Right Circle is one such initiative of the foundation that aims at bridging the gap between an author and his or her readers. The Right Circle is presented by Shri Cement in association with Hyde Raipur and is brought to you by SAS Women of Raipur. We are privileged this evening to have online with us Deepak Ramola, founder and artistic director of Project Fuel and Kindness Ambassador for UNESCO. MGIEP, he is the author of two much loved books, namely 50 Toughest Questions of Life and a collection of poems, Itna to main samajh gaya hoon. Additionally, he has changed the lives of so many people living in some of the worst conditions across the world through Project Fuel. Deepak is a poet, TED speaker, life skills educator, lyricist, and a self-confessed potato lover, if his Twitter account is to be believed. In conversation with Deepak, we have Vibhuti Duggar Mutha, a licensed instructor, mind mapping NLP, and timeline therapy, ABNLP, and Access Foundation practitioner. She founded Project Purpose in 2015 and has 12 years of corporate training experience in India and UAE. Our committed associates, Raipur and Sri Cement allows us to bring events of such magnificence to you continuously. So, ladies and gentlemen, without much delay, I hand over the online stage to Vibhuti and Deepak. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Please
so much,
carry.
Kalpana ma'am, for a beautiful start to the event. And I welcome you all on behalf of the organizing committee. I'm really glad, privileged, and honored to be here to have a conversation. I'll not call it an interview, a conversation with Deepak. And it's a vast area of things that I would like to know from Deepak. Before even starting with my first question, as I was researching on your profile, Deepak, there were few lines from my poem that really resonated, and which I'd recite, leading to my first question. कहानी तो सबकी होती है ना, कहानी तो सबकी होती है ना, ऊपर से सादी दिखने वाली किसे पता कितनी गहरी होती है, कहानी तो सबकी होती है ना, सुनते तो सभी हैं, सुनते तो सभी हैं, कदर तो सिर्फ समझने वाले की होती है ना, कहानी तो सबकी होती है ना.
Beautiful.
And I think that resonates so much with the work that you do, that it doesn't matter where the story is coming from. It matters what the story is and who's telling it. Yeah. And that is so profound. And Kalpana ma'am has already, shared the vast areas in which you work. So I would like to ask, for the first question for today is, where and how did your journey start, in what you do?
First of all, thank you, Vibhuti, for that question. I'll just return to it. Let me say hi to everybody. A very warm good evening and namaste, everybody. Thank you, Kalpana ji, for that introduction. I think I can listen to my own, journey and escapades in your voice, I think, for a few more hours. So thank you for that. And thank you everybody for joining in today. Vibhuti, to answer your question, I've thought a lot about it. Where does a person's journey really begin? When I take my name, Deepak Ramola, the Ramola has been there for centuries. I mean, I think of my father, I think of my father's father, who was in the first Gadwal regiment that got decommissioned because he was one of the only two survivors from the first Gadwal regiment. I think of his grandfather, who was a Ramola and had to survive everything, and then his grandfather, and I tried to do the exercise and I can't do it anymore. And I think for every single of person in that generation and subsequent had to survive for me to, be healthy and safe enough to sit and do this session today. So I think the journey begins there, in the success of every single Ramola who came before me. And that gives me a lot of confidence to build where my journey begins, which is, with the name Deepak. And all I have to do is try to kind of, manage the status quo for my own expectations with that. And I try to say and share that with young people I meet across this country and the world, that, a lot of young children tell me, I don't like my surname. I don't like, and they don't even say it. I just met this person the other day. His name was Kabir, and I said, "What a wonderful name!" I said, "What's your full name?" And he said, "Oh, don't bother about my surname. I don't like it." And I often find it interesting that for you to not like your surname, so many people had to live their life with absolute struggle and success. So I would like to believe that my story begins even before I was conceived in somebody's mind. And I also like to believe that my story also gets a chance to redefine where I begin, which is now, and with the work I am doing. So, sorry, long answer to a short question, but such a beautiful question. So it got me thinking about, where does really a story begin?
Yeah, and such a beautiful answer too, because it said that every story starts with a story behind, and that's what the legacy which carries on before us, before even we were born.
Yes.
So beautifully shared. They say that people would show interest in you when you show interest in people. People are only interested in you when you are interested in them. So when does the idea about being interested in people's story, in listening to them, in finding out their life lessons, so how did that idea germinated?
Sure. My mother was pulled out of school in grade 5 by her grandmother. And my mother used to tell that story growing up, and she still tells it to my younger cousins, that she didn't go to school. And growing up, when I heard that story, I never believed it. I didn't believe that my mother never went to school, because she's one of the smartest people I know. I often joke that my dad has never won an argument against her. And that talks about her communication skills, that talks about her debating skills. She still manages the finances of our house. Having never solved a profit and loss maths equation, she is the one that has been entrusted with the responsibility of not only raising us, but our school fees and our tuition classes and relatives and weddings and, all the rigmarole of running a house. My mother has done that without an MBA. And so growing up, when I was 14, I was very confused, because I thought, how can you be this smart if you didn't go to school? Why do we have to go to school, if you could be this smart without going to it? And my mother said to me something so interesting. She said, life has been my classroom, and I'm learning by just being observant in that classroom. And to my 14-year-old brain, Vibhuti, that meant that if she was learning simply by living, that means everyone who's living is learning something. And where can I find that information? I tried to Google it. My first response was Nani's life lesson, and nothing came. And then I Googled my best friend's dad, who was a little popular in Dehradun. So I thought, my Nani's not famous enough. Maybe his life lesson would come, and it wasn't there. And so I was very surprised that only, what the British author Quentin Crisp says, 2% of the golden society gets to have a legacy beyond their families. your grandmother, your parents, each one of us knows so many people whose wisdom, if we could package into small tablets and pop as pills, we would be really rich people in the self-help industry, But I never saw it. And it was deeply disturbing to me that my mother's beautiful learnings about relationship or about not having gone to school, but, being educated enough to use life's knowledge would not reach a girl in Nepal, or what would not reach my sister's students in, a slum school. And so I started collecting life lessons and I started distributing them through educational modules and all of that. So that's where really my interest in people grew, because of my mother and the question that if she has learned so much, what have other people learned in their lives?
Beautiful. So that's where the seed was, sowed, and it became a tree. My next question leading to that would be, so was there a vision that you followed to grow it this big, to grow it to a global level, or you just went with the flow? And how would you, share that journey?
My challenges were so difficult and different, Vibhuti. I wasn't even thinking about turning this into a global movement. Project Fuel has now been voted as world's top 100 innovations in education. It's been adopted by countries like Belgium and Nepal and US. I can tell you, when a 17-year-old starts with a work like this, that's not what he or she is thinking. I was 17, I looked 14, and I sounded 10. So my struggle was to be taken seriously. I was in a school in Calcutta, and I was wearing a white shirt and a blue pant just by coincidence. And I walked up to the receptionist where I was invited to teach. This is 2 years ago, so not that far. Now things are better. So at 17, they were really worse. And because the receptionist from her podium could only see me shoulders up, I said, I want to meet principal ma'am, because I thought it's courteous enough to meet the school principal before the session. And she said, which class are you from and why are you not in your class? And I played along the prank, and I was like, you know what? We don't have a teacher. I've come to complain about a substitute teacher. And she made me sit in a corner. Only until the class, my event time was starting up, I said, I'm sorry to play the prank, but I'm here to teach. And she didn't believe me. Like, I had to call the other coordinator in. So my challenges from the early years were just to be taken seriously. People mistook me to be the son of the professor. People took me to be, the cousin of the, person who was going to speak at the event. A 17-year-old talking about wisdom and life lessons is such a no-no for people, because, the idea is that wisdom comes with age. But as Oscar Wilde beautifully once said, sometimes comes only age and wisdom gets lost somewhere behind. So for me, I think there was a belief that this work is important. And even if there is no classroom, no audience, I would still collect life lessons and I would still sit across people. I mean, I do that now, even when I'm not paid for it, even if I'm not, doing it as a collaboration. If I'm if on an airplane, I will turn to my co-passenger and have a 2-hour conversation, or whatever the flight duration is. And I think now, looking back, I'm able to do that without the pressure and responsibility of Project Fuel, is because that's what speaks to the core of me, the belief that everybody has a valuable learning to share. And, if you're not paying attention, you aren't really benefiting out of it. And there are 7 billion people. If the conservative estimate is, if one person has to offer only one advice, you have 7 billion advices waiting to be heard. And I haven't even scratched the surface. I've spoken to 4 lakh people in the last 10 years. 4 lakh. And still, just yesterday, I was in a conversation with somebody and they said something so beautiful that I said, I have never heard that. 4 lakh people have not been able to say it. And I'll tell you what that is, because I'm sure everybody who's listening will enjoy this. I was speaking to him about leadership. And the person said to me, Deepak, my father growing up used to say, not everybody has to invent the wheel. If you want to lead a parade, find one and get in front. And I have never heard anybody say, if you want to lead a parade, find one and get in front. Everybody I've spoken to, they've said, start a parade, bring people together and start your own karma. But that was something new. So every day is fascinating.
Beautiful. There are so many things I want to ask you, because there are so many things that you do which I'm so passionate about, like poetry, like I do wall painting, and you've done projects like Wise Walls. Um, now, I, as started growing up, I started using all my hobbies and interests. Started painting walls, started doing poetry, corporate training in psychology is my forte. With all of this, people started saying like, but who are you?
Hmm.
Are you a poet? Are you an artist? Are you a corporate trainer? So do you get to that existential question sometimes, that who am I? Or it's okay to be, master of so many things, and or jack of all and master of none, like old saying comes. What is your take on that? Because I struggle with it
Yeah.
at times.
I made peace very, very long time ago that I am okay being Jack. I have problems being master. And actually that phrase, Vibhuti, is very interestingly misquoted to demean people who know a lot of things. The actual full phrase is Jack of all trades, master of none, but still better than knowing just one. That's the real, and people have over the years condensed it to just the first part. But actually being a Jack is a respectable thing, because the original philosophy, as all your Michelangelo and all the people in the Greek culture, in the Roman culture, and our history were multitaskers. The kings in our Vedas and the gurus in our heritage were all very well versed with archery and horse riding. And I mean, you can tell them just do one thing, right? Run your empire. But they felt the need that to have multiple skills would allow somebody to weave them into one skill. And that's why there was no pressure of taking the credit. I'm digressing from your question, but it's something that I want to truly address. When you are only a master of one skill, you feel very threatened when somebody else does that job and you feel your credit is stolen. But who has written the Vedas? We really don't know. In that, I mean, we know the Rishi Munis, and we know that. But in Mahabharata, for example, written by Ved Vyas, but not many people know that Ved Vyas is not a person, it's a position. And it was the 10th, I think his name was Krishnavalli, Krishna's 10th avatar in the Rishi form, who was given the work to fill the position of Ved Vyas. So Ved Vyas is a title, it's not a name. And that gives such reassurance that people were okay building their skills rather than chasing one title. We are so caught up with the noun. I speak to young writers now. Everybody wants to be a writer. Nobody wants to write. So, people want to be a really reality show winning dancer. And they're not willing to do their rehearsals 4 hours a day. So I feel, to answer your question and circle back to it, I am really okay with living my life, exploring 10,000 things, then being labeled with one thing if I'm not okay with it. People who are okay with it, that's absolutely fine. But I'm not okay with it. And I think what that does for me is it allows my, mastery in weaving one skill into another. Just one last example in that I would give is when I started writing songs, people said, come on, now you were teaching, then you were painting, now you're also writing songs for Bollywood films. Honestly, when I went to teach in Nepal post the earthquake, and so many of my students had lost their parents, lost their homes, you can't get into a class and say, I'm here to teach you life lessons. So I would sing songs to them that I had learned through my lyrics writing career, Nepali songs. And then they would course correct for the first 20 minutes. That's not the lyrics, that's not the melody. And we would create a bond that would facilitate the room where we could talk about loss and letting go. So I take my music very seriously because it enables me to be more wholesome in my class, in that sense. And many young people all over the world are put down for doing too many things. But you only know what you're good at by doing too many things and attempting it, right? So, I mean, if you're okay being Jack Vibhuti, then nobody really should be concerned.
No, I'm really glad to hear that from you, because you come from a position where when you say something, people will listen, and you can influence minds. And because when young adults come to me for one-to-one counseling sessions, there are so many kids who would come and say that, you know what, I like to do 10 things, but parents say that, what are you doing? You're confused. Why can't you stick to one thing? Today you're doing this, tomorrow you're doing that. And it's a battle in the mind of the child. But I like doing 10 things. So I don't know who all are listening right now, wherever this message goes. People should embrace the fact that it's okay to be jack of all trades. So I was coming from there, because from experience I see the dilemma in the kids' mind, where they say that, oh my God, what do I do, ma'am? How do I convince my parents that it's okay to be jack of all trades?
Yeah, yeah.
Another question which keeps coming back, and I would like you to answer that, because you've done that, you've been there. Uh, there is a struggle to be in the A and the B schools, and if I don't get there, I might not be the authority figure, or I not make it well in life. Where you talk about learning life lessons from anybody on the street and still making your life beautiful. So how do you address that question, that giving a message that it's okay, it doesn't matter which school, which college do you belong to, and still have the confidence to lead your life the way you would like to lead? Over to you.
Wow, that is a loaded question. Primarily, and so beautifully asked. Thank you. I think being in a good school is only about opportunities. It has nothing to do with who you are as a person. I have never gone to any, I would say top A grade school. I have a fairly A-type personality. And, as they come, I was just teaching the other day at the Google headquarters in San Francisco. I have never been to a B school myself as a student. I've taught in many. I have spoken at the United Nations twice. I have 11 jobs. I serve as a kindness ambassador to UNESCO MGIB. I don't think so that, yours, people mistake that the school make you. You make the school name. You say Dia Mirza went to that school. You say Malala studied here, right? So you never say, oh, this is the school and it helped produce Malala. That's not the phrase you use. So if it actually depends on the student, that means there has to be somewhere, a level of inspection as to, in a single class in an Indian school, there are 60 kids. Not everybody gets a six-figure paying job. Not everybody, has a massive sort of impact in the world in the general sense of the way. Not everybody is making the headlines. Is everybody a failure? Not necessarily. My sister is very comfortable teaching 20 kids in her slum school that she leads, while I teach 5 lakh people and she doesn't want to be me, And when I see her, I see somebody who's so assured with what they want to do with their life. What most parents want their children to do is be more rich and famous. That's the challenge. You want your kid to achieve notoriety, not understanding and well-being. I mean, and I'm not generalizing. I'm saying this from experience of having worked with a lot of parents. I keep asking parents, what do you want for your child? We want them to do well. What does well look like? We want them to have good money. What does good money look like? And it all boils down to a 6-figure salary, a big house, and a car. And then you circle back and say, what does the child want? The child wants to be happy. How does the child want to be happy? By doing something they like. Your job in the process, our job as, facilitators, as guides, parents, partners, becomes to help them monetize what they like, so that they're comfortable and they're not, scrounging to pay their bills. That's what the real job is. But we tell them the formula works and the formula never works. I was in a full-time job. And I did the job while I was setting up Project Fuel. Till Project Fuel paid, I did that job and did Project Fuel. But nobody told me it was either and or. You either do a job or you do what you like. I discovered for my own self that no, I could do a full-time job, till a certain period of time. And on weekends, take a train to Ahmedabad and teach at the National School of Blind and build my curriculum for 3 years until somebody invited me and paid me for that session. And I said, oh, all right, if I do this for these many years, I probably don't need a job. So I would say that A school, B schools, and Vibhuti, it's very funny because I was in the US for 3 months. And so many Silicon Valley, the Bay Area that we talk about, their parents wanted their children to intern at Project Fuel. And you know why? Because when you write a college application, you have to answer a question about your personal experience, right? And your experience cannot be that I was driving a Tesla. That's not what's going to get you in. Your experience has to be more rooted, more grounded. Many of those kids have no answer when in the interview they were asked, what's the biggest adversity that you have faced in life? And so I see it from that sense that, we who are called the outsiders are the aspiration now, because they need us to get into the A schools and the B schools. But that's not where the learning truly lies. The learning is outside of that. That's where you use the learning to build solutions that have the labs, that have the technology, and that have the right support system to build your ideas. But if you think going to Harvard will give you the right idea, you are highly mistaken. I teach people in those colleges, and I know that they are looking for ideas just like you and me. So that's my answer to that.
It's amazing the way you've put it across, and I absolutely resonate with it. I used to teach in a cat coaching center. I never appeared for a cat, and I was teaching vocabulary so with these kids. And now I just tell whenever somebody asks this question, I said I've taught in a cat coaching center, never appeared for cat. And how do you go about it? So a wonderful answer. I think this needs to be spread, Deepak. Trust me, because a lot of kids are struggling with the tag of A school and B school. Right?
Yeah.
Leading to the next question, Project Fuel. I'd like to know more about how it started. And under Project Fuel, I know you have multiple projects that are running, different ideas. There's so many ideas that caught my eye, like the postcard initiative. Because we did something in Dubai, we created letters for refugee camp. We did 700 letters in 4 hours and sent to a refugee camp. And I could, as soon as I saw the postcard, I said, wow, this is so beautiful. So which project under Project Fuel you'd like to talk about? How did it start and where is it now and where is it going? A huge question, but because it's a short span of time, I'm just putting across in one statement.
Wow. As you said, there are so many things happening. I'm thinking which one to mention. Let me do two. Am I allowed to do two? Awesome. There's a project we started in 2017 called the Wise Wall Project under Project Fuel. We were working with a lot of villages where literacy levels were low, and there was not a lot of conversation about reading life lessons or doing workshops. So we used art as a medium, and we hand painted an entire village with the life lessons of people who lived in it. And I wish I had time to show on the screen, but people who are listening, do check out. It's called Wise Wall Project. And we first adopted a village here in India, in Uttarakhand, where I live, that's facing a ghost, village problem, which is migration challenge. Out of 200 villages, 200 families, only 12 were left behind. So we tracked all 200 across the world, asked their memories and their learnings from the village, and then hand painted their abandoned homes. And now this has become the first village of life lessons in the world. The tourism has increased. In 2018, we adopted another village in Uttarakhand called Khati. Again, the community needs were no roads, no electricity, no internet. And that's the village we've worked with. Currently, we're working with a village in Tanzania with the Maasai tribe. And the women there walk 9 hours for water. So for the last 2 years, I've dedicated a lot of my time to build a community center and a water harvesting unit for those women and children there. And this July, hopefully once the COVID willing scenario, permits, we will be going and inaugurating the community center. And it's one of the biggest joys of my life to be able to take that project internationally to assist a community whose language I don't speak. I mean, I need 3 translators to be with the tribe and, understand what they're saying. But to be able to solve human problems with human solutions is what, that project speaks to me. And the second project that I would like everybody to explore, it's called the World Wisdom Map. During the COVID, lockdown last year, this year feels a full revision of last year, but during last year we realized that there was so much loss on Indian televisions, right, or world televisions and news. How many people died, how many people infected, just the rising numbers. I wanted to create a hopeful solution, so we tracked down one person in every single country in the world and took down their life lesson and story and created a digital world map that showcases life lessons of people from every single country in the world. And we did beautiful deep dives. It features life lessons of a lot of amazing people from India as well. Bollywood, non-Bollywood, sports, common people, a fisherman from Myanmar to, an LGBTQ activist from Ecuador. That World Wisdom Map, in the last 3 months, we launched it on Christmas and New Year's, for the world to see, has received so much of traffic and so much of participation. It's been accessed by more than 3 lakh people in the last 3 months, and it's a beautiful collection of story. We started with 195, and now there are more than 450 life lessons and stories. So those 2 projects, are really long durational projects that I've really enjoyed working on.
It's just wow and aha moments with every answer. And the stories are so powerful and so inspiring. Leading on to the next question, which I would like to ask, because we spoke about your journey, we spoke about you as a person, where your journey started. Now let's come to your writing. As an author, as a poet, and a lyricist, because I would not just put as an author, all 3 combined. How's your journey towards writing? Because as I got to know about a story that how you the song Pehla Nasha, you put your own words, and that's how you learn how to write lyrics of a song. It's a self-taught journey. There are so many beautiful analogies that can come out of it. So tell us about your journey as a poet, lyricist, and an author, please.
Okay, wonderful. You mentioned Pehla Nasha. So just to give a context to everybody, I grew up in Dehradun, knew nobody in Mumbai, wanted to be a songwriter, hopefully someday. And so my house and my school, the distance between the 2 was 1.5 hours. With every pit stop for every student and teacher, it picked the bus. And on the bus, they used to play AIR FM Rainbow. And from the point I boarded the bus till my school, it was good 1 hour. So I would take the first song on the radio, rip off the lyrics, because I didn't have a band, I didn't have a music director giving me a melody. So I took a famous song, I ripped off its lyrics, and I put in my words to it. And I did that, Vibhuti, for 3,000 songs, I think, in 3-4 years. So by the time I got to Bombay and I got my first film, Manji the Mountain Man, I didn't feel overwhelmed, even though Ketan Mehta, the director, was very unsure of making a 20-year-old write, for Manji, who had broken a mountain for 22 years for his wife. He said, "Tumhe sacha pyar bhi hua hai kya kabhi?" That was his first question to me. And so I told him, I'm not overwhelmed because I've done this. I just have to close my eyes and imagine I'm in my school bus and I have to finish the song. Similarly, for Atrangi Yari with Mr. Bachchan and Farhan, I wrote the song in 12 minutes. This is before they told me Amitabh Bachchan is going to sing it, because then the pressure increases and you want to have the right Hindi words and you want to have the right diction. So I made a few corrections. But that's what I mean with people who come from middle class families, who come from small towns. We have to invent our own learning schools. We have to invent our own methodologies to get where we want to get. Because nobody in Bombay is going to sit and teach me how to write song lyrics when I show up there, So I had to do my 4 years of homework even before I knew I was going to Bombay for college, or convincing my parents for it. So I think my lyrics writing journey really started there. As a poet, my journey started with my Hindi teacher, school Hindi teacher, Srimati Shraddha Bakshi ma'am. Wonderful human being. I was in grade 7th. I was doing debate competitions. And, it daur tha where you would start a debate with 4 lines of a poet. That was just the style that a lot of debaters used. And I remember there was a topic about Uttarakhand's electricity development or something, and then no poet had written so specifically about that. So I was complaining, and she said, why don't you attempt 4 lines? And if you can write 4, write 8, and then write 12, and then don't stop till the piece is done. And that's my first memory of writing a poem for my debate competition. And then I started writing, and I never stopped and haven't stopped, fortunately. As an author, I would say I purposely didn't write for a long time. I mean, 50 toughest questions or Itna Tumhe Samajh Gaya Hu, which released in 2018. And I was telling this to Apra ji, who heads the Jaipur chapter and is an integral part. I don't know if she's part of the session today, but I was telling this to, she is, wonderful. I was telling Apra ji this, that it is so much of an internal process to believe that you will have a book in your hand which will have your own name. Writing 1 or 2 Instagram posts, writing a blog here and there is fairly decent. A book is a commitment. And writing is both praying and cursing at the same time. Because, with everything I'm doing, where do you find the discipline to sit and write page after page and then have the courage to edit and, change and discard? So it took me a while. I was offered a book deal at 17 by a really good publication. They wanted to do a book about life lessons that I had harvested from the age of 14 to 17. But I felt I wasn't ready to say and speak, about what that wisdom could translate. So I took 10 years, 12 years rather, to build Project Fuel, so that when somebody discovered my book and they wanted to do more, they would be able to access something and they would not be left in a lurch. So I wrote 50 toughest questions after playing this as a game for good 4 years with people across the world. I was teaching a girl in Afghanistan. I was teaching a school in Afghanistan, and the principal of that school was a 21-year-old girl. Taliban, unfortunately, shut down that school, and I couldn't get to go back and meet my students. And on the last day on Skype, we were talking, and she said, Deepak, life is not about giving easy answers. It's about answering tough questions. And I thought, what are tough questions? So I curated 3,000 of them. That's how crazy I am. I spent a year and a half curating tough questions from around the world, my own questions. And I narrowed the 3,000 down to 150 and 50. And I played it on first dates. I would ask this to people I was dating if they were worthy enough. When you ask somebody 50 toughest questions about their life, you can pretty much know if you want to date them or not. So I invented that as a dating game. It went on and carried on to relatives who came home for dinner, cousins I met at weddings, students in schools I met. And eventually when I felt that now I am ready to, pass it on, so I started writing the book. So nothing in my, workspace is a happenstance. I pay attention to how I'm feeling and how my feeling can be the intangible feeling, right? You can't see pain, you can feel pain. How do you take the intangible and make it tangible, make it physical into something concrete? Until the time I don't have that, clarity, I don't write at all. That's something that I follow for myself. Otherwise, you will only sound half-baked. So that's something that I have been able to practice in all 3 of the things that I do. I have the second poetry book. I just sent the manuscript 2 weeks back to my publisher, at Vani Prakashan. I'm very excited for her to read it. So I am still writing because I'm still observing. And I know a lot of people who join, the writer circle, the Kalam sessions, are people who love words. And so that's what I would say to everybody listening, that try to articulate how you're feeling in as many words, and do not hold yourself too, judgmental, whether it's publishing worthy or not. If you love words, find ways to make love or interact with them as much as possible.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that wonderful answer, which leads me to my question from your answer, which is given. Because you've said a lot about preparation right now, right? So with the stories that you've shared, You were preparing yourself so much that when the opportunity arrived, you were there and you didn't feel overwhelmed. My question is that what would you say to people who are preparing but do not have the confidence to persist and be there in the preparation mode till the opportunity arrives? Because a lot of people lose hope halfway. That what am I preparing for if there is no opportunity? So how do you sustain that preparation and consistency to wait till the opportunity arrives?
Wow. I think, the US media mogul Oprah Winfrey says it beautifully, that luck is nothing but preparation meet opportunity. Um, I think I talk about preparation because I also know that people only define you by what you have done. Only you get to define yourself by what you're going to do, because only you know, right? And expect no friends in that journey. I don't expect anybody in my office, at my home, to understand what my next big idea is, because it's big to me. To them, it's another project. My mother, the other day, my father, unfortunately was unwell and is admitted at the hospital. And I was telling him, Papa, you had so much time, you could read my book. And he said, I don't want to be more unwell. So I mean, that's the context of my parents and their humor related to my work. So to them, my next book is a big deal for my publisher and my readers. To my parents, it's another book I have to attempt, and they will laugh and joke about at the dinner table. But I would say to people, it is not only preparation. Preparation is the first step. You have to be willing to collaborate and create your opportunities. If you're waiting for things to come to you, I'm sorry, it will not happen. This is the 21st century. Everybody has a cell phone and everybody's aspiring. And by everybody, I mean, not a generalized term, but everybody who has internet access and is young and wanting to have a voice wants to have 1 million followers. So you're competing with every second person who has a cell phone and an attention span within that cell phone to look at something. So for you to be able to make a mark, it's not just preparation. You have to be willing to collaborate. You have to be willing to ask for help. You have to be willing to just ask. People don't ask enough. And that's the problem. Just a very small example I will give you. I was invited as a keynote speaker to a summit in, or actually, wait, let me give you another context and example. I was looking on the internet 2 years ago, 3 years ago, just conferences I could attend. And I found a beautiful conference in Dubai. I wrote to the organizers and I said, hey, this is what I do. I would love to come and speak. And this is at a stage where I don't need to write. I get invitations, I turn most things according to the schedule down or take them up. But I wanted to be part of a sustainable development conversation. And I wrote to them. They said, okay, you come to Dubai and we'll host you. So I go to Dubai. The event was a failure, according to the organizers. It was a really poorly organized thing. They did a voting on who should come to the next edition. And, I was fortunate that I was chosen by the people who attended. And I was invited to Sweden. I was on a panel discussion in Sweden on the second edition of that event with a project director from Belgium and a girl from Nigeria. After the panel discussion, the project director from Belgium stayed in touch. And a year and a half later, Project Fuel's methodology was adopted by the entire city in Antwerp. And, it's one of the first countries in the world that has completely made their curriculum wisdom-centric from, you can learn from the school gardener and the child. Now, if I track back to that story, many people, see the Sweden conference and they'll be like, oh, that's how you got to the Belgium conference or the Belgium collaboration. But it really started with me wanting to apply to the Dubai conference. And then 3 years later, having a country adopt my methodology. Asking for, opportunities, reaching out to people is something that you should never lose touch in. Because if you forget how to ask, you will not know the value of giving, and you will not know the skill of it as well. So you'll not be able to distinguish when somebody asks you, you will not know if that is a genuine request and to what degree you should give if you don't ask yourself. So every Sunday, Vibhuti, no matter how my schedule is, no matter where I'm traveling, I send 50 emails or Instagram DMs to somebody I love on the internet.
Wow.
And it has been phenomenal. Some of my most amazing collaborators in the world are people I reached out to, and often they say, how did you write to us? Because I wanted to. you know
Yeah. Beautifully summed up. It's like the saying, old age saying, you ask and you shall receive. And I think that's how you're following. And but that was beautifully answered with the people who are stuck with preparation and not getting the opportunity. It's not even it's not just preparation, you have to ask for it. We're leading on to our next segment, and before I move on to the next segment, I would like to sum up with few more lines from my collection for you. कि कुछ होते हैं ना जो जमीन पे रह के आसमां छू लेते हैं, कुछ होते हैं ना जो जमीन पे रह के आसमां छू लेते हैं, देखने में ऊपर से कुछ खास नहीं लगते, not in an offending way. देखने में ऊपर से कुछ खास नहीं लगते, but यूं ही चलते चलते तारे तोड़ लेते. कुछ होते हैं ना जो जमीन पे रह के आसमां छू लेते हैं.
Wow,
It was just beautiful listening to your stories and answers, Deepak. And I would now open the forum for everybody to ask questions. And I would give the floor to Shrishti here. Yes, Shrishti, over to you.
Okay, hello everyone. So now the forum is open for the Q&A session. So if you have any question, you can write it out in the chat box. I'll read out to Deepak, or you can raise your hand and I'll unmute you, on which you can ask the question to Deepak yourself. So yeah, bring it in.
Hi, Srishti, I have a question. Hi,
Yes,
Deepak,
please,
how are you?
Hi, Apraji. Nice to see you. I was just taking your name. Didn't know if you were part of the session.
Yes. Hi, Vibhuti, how are you?
Hi, I'm very well. Thank you.
Wonderful. So I would really want you, Deepak ji, to share the beautiful relationship which you share with your grandmother. And how much inspiration have you taken from her? She is a rock star. Deepak ji's mother and Deepak ji's grandmother, they both are rock stars. So why don't you share about them a bit, because, so many viewers today are women, and, women play a very important role in, everybody's lives. But, you must share about the two of them.
Thank you. Definitely. That's a good reminder. My Nani is a rock star, as Apraji said, a force of nature. She was married at the age of 13 and, gave birth to 8 kids in, her lifetime, and still very much around. What I love about her is she taught me that don't allow people to mistake being literate and being educated as the same thing. And she said, I know a lot of people who have double MBBS, and I would not sit with them and speak for 5 minutes. And I know women in the, in my village who never saw the face of a book, but you can talk to them all night through till the sun comes up. So my grandmother was married at 13, still lives in a village in Uttarakhand, is so well tuned with the values and the learnings that she has from her daily life. I think that's where my mother gets it. And one of the things that I would like to share with you, as Apraji reminded, is a beautiful story she shared with me about feminism. We talk about feminism and women empowerment today, but how was it taught really in 1940s and 1950s? So when my grandmother was married, her father-in-law sat her down at age 13 and told her that, every compound in the village had a mango tree. And he explained to this newly, wedded girl that never stop anybody from taking the mangoes from our garden. You cannot sell them, and you cannot stop anybody from eating them. And when she asked why, he said that the fruit of mango, in the belief system, was created in Satyug to remind men of the debt they owe to breastfeeding. So the entire fruit, the design of the fruit, the way we, originally. Now, of course, we have the 7-spoon fashion eating of it, but the way the mango was originally devoured was created to create a direct understanding of the debt men owe to womanhood. And that's why this story passed on, and she would tell the story to her 4 sons to be respectful of women. And the analogy and the metaphor of the mango was a direct connotation, so that whenever they would see it, it would remind them that respecting women because they owe a debt to the breast that fed them. Now, these are the stories that they were born and brought up with. And my grandmother is a khazana of those stories, and one of my best friends in that sense. I learn a lot from her. So thank you, Apraji, for bringing her reference. I could share this story with everyone.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much and all the best.
Thank you.
So Smita ji wants to ask a question. I'll unmute her so that she can ask the question. Smita ji, if you're there.
Okay. Good evening, Deepak. That's wonderful to hear from you. And I was simultaneously looking at your profile on Google. And it's awesome to see that you're from Army school. I'm from also Army background, so somehow connect better with that.
Thank you.
And I think Vibhuti's asked such lovely questions. That's also good. My question would be as simple as this, although we do talk about it. I am myself a psychotherapist, and we do talk about it, but what would be, because we have so many people here, what would be your suggestion, or something would you like to say to the parents or the elders, how to deal with children, the bundle of energy they are in home, and to stay in home, and yeah, the patience level of the elders. So maybe you can, say some few words and few things for the elders here to hang on and. Yeah.
Yes. Smita ji, thank you for that question. My parents should answer that.
Yeah, I know.
Because I think they are troubled with me at this point.
Yeah, I know they should, but unfortunately they're not here. I would have asked them. I would have.
No, absolutely. My only suggestion would be, it's not just to do with kids being at home. It's something that I've seen with my own parents, and something they did beautifully. Is when you ask parents what is their aspiration, it's mostly for their kids to do well. You ask that question again, and it is again to do with somebody outside of them. Kids really respond well when their parents have mini goals for themselves, and they see their parents trying to pursue those goals, trying to achieve their to-do list, and they feel compelled that if my parent can do this, I can do this. So my mother, as I mentioned, never went to school. Her last birthday, she said to me, I would like for you to arrange a personal tutor at home so I can learn to read and write by the time I'm 60. And so I can read your books on my own, and your father doesn't have to read them to you. I was so inspired by that my mother has her own goal. She's not asking me to write 3 more books. She's saying, help me learn to read your first 2 myself. And that was phenomenal. The second I would say is do things as a family where you're willing to show that you can fail. Kids feel pressurized when they see somebody or the need to succeed constantly. So if you don't paint with your children. Draw a worse cat or a worse landscape than them. And let them see that, you are allowing yourself to make mistakes. You have the room to grow. So that the days where you're really exasperated with their energy and you're really tired, they don't see it as an out of question thing. They see it as a very human thing. Something that they go with and you go with and, translate it. A child recently advised me, I asked him, what is your advice for adults? And he said, stop looking through the keyhole, open the damn door. So that's my advice to you, because it came from a child. And I asked him, what is a keyhole? And he said, the expectations you have for yourself in front of your children. So allow yourself to, be more vulnerable. Communicate that you're having a hard day and see how they respond, because in that response, you will be building their empathy quotient. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, I too hope that helps the parents here. And I have one more question. If the
Smitaji,
time.
I'm so sorry. Just one question at a time because we
Okay,
already have questions lined up.
okay.
You
So
you
next
can
time
still
when I
write the
attend with Deepak, next
Yes.
time when I come. Thanks, it's pending.
yeah. So we have questions by Mr. Amit Mehta. He asked Deepak, will the next generation Indian urban parents be more liberal for their wards, future career choices? Your thoughts?
Absolutely. I mean, I think when we become parents, we will know the struggles of, I mean, we would still want our children to have, security and sustainability and financial stability. But I think we will be more liberal because we would have experienced or we have experienced the plethora of options that we want to pursue. And, somewhere the conventional nature of the towns, of the families we come from, often becomes a roadblock into accessing that faster. And by the time we have families, you're not a young person anymore, the responsibilities increase, and so the career choices become, I won't say limited, become redefined. And so I think when we become parents, our children will not have to struggle till the age of 25 to or 30 to tell us what they really want to do. By the time they are graduating 12 boards, they will say, I know what my career is going to be. And hopefully we are open, because if history has to repeat itself, what have we truly learned? So Amitji, I do feel that the next generation of our urban and rural parents will be more sensitive towards career choices, because there will be so many. People are now influencers. If I told my parents 10 years ago I wanted to be an influencer, they would slap me. Now I don't think so that's possible. People want their kids to do well on the internet and facilitate that space. So it's already changing. And by, I think, next 20 years, it's going to change drastically.
So our next question is from Hemal Pandey. She asks, what will you suggest when a person faces writer's block?
Thank you, Himalji, for the question. Don't be afraid to borrow from other artists and other writers. I listen to songs, I listen to songs, I read. People are just afraid to create their original work. There's nothing original in the world. Let me just break that to anybody who's trying to create that. There is nothing original. There are just original ways of saying the same thing. And for you to say the same thing in an original way, you need to know how. So a lot of times when I'm trying to write a piece, for example, for my second Hindi book, my sister was very adamant that my first Hindi book had a poem dedicated to my mother. And she said, Deepak, if your second book doesn't have a poem on our father, I'm not going to read and promote it. And so that was a big flag. I wanted to write a poem on my father. And I literally spent 8 months looking for poetry written on fathers. There isn't much. माँ के ऊपर कविता लिखना बहुत आसान है, पिता के ऊपर कविता लिखना बहुत मुश्किल है और बहुत कम लोगों ने अटेम्प्ट किया है. But I think I read most of it from world languages. I read Polish, literature. I read Greek literature, and various ways in which people had found the metaphors to define their fathers. And then I found the inspiration to write my own piece, which hopefully is original in what I want to say. But in that sense, I would say when you're facing a writer's block, 2 things help, or 3 things help. One is borrow from other artists, listen to songs, go to galleries, or Google Arts and Culture and visit museums sitting, in your home. Second, be in nature. That really allows for my mind to work. A bird chirping, you can't control nature. So it always allows you to think impromptu. And that'll hopefully fuel some inspiration. And third is anti-meditate. This is what I practice every day. A lot of people do meditations. As a writer, I suggest anti-meditation, which is, meditation is stopping your thoughts, or at least, thinking the stillness of the void, creating the void without thoughts. Anti-meditation is following thoughts wherever they go and following as many thoughts. And so that when they wrap up, you have something to say. And that only happens when you interrogate your thoughts. So those 3 things. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepak. So next question is from Saurabh Acharya. And he says, as you quoted Oscar Wilde about the age and the wisdom thing, being writers, we observe a lot of things around us and then our imagination takes over. So, how much do you think it is important for the younger generation to be sensitive about things happening around us so that they can feel deeply connected to try and bring a change in the same direction?
Wow, well put, Saurabhji. There is, whether it's the younger generation or whether it's this generation or the older generation, without observation and sensitivity, I don't think so anybody can live a wholesome life. Well-being rests on the very principle of being observant. How are you feeling? How is somebody else around you feeling? And being sensitive to whatever the discovery is. If these two qualities, and it's very unfortunate that these two qualities are not taught in schools. You don't get to know if you're 1 out of 10 in sensitivity or you're 10 out of 10. If somebody labels you a bully, then you know you are 2 out of 10 or 1 out of 10. But I think it is so crucial for kids to be observant, to be empathetic, to turn their entire bodies into ears and eyes and look and listen from their entire space and being. That allows for beautiful things to happen. In many ways, this observation and sensitivity evaporates when you are trying to just course correct people. If I want to change how Vibhuti thinks about certain thing, or Apraji thinks or Neeraj thinks about certain things, and my entire life purpose is changing that, then I am not focused on my own growth. But to be focused on your own growth, you have to be observant and sensitive to your needs. Otherwise, you're only critical and cynical about what other people are doing to you. And I think that the ability to distinguish that comes with observation and comes with being sensitive. So yes, definitely couldn't champion it more.
So the next question is from Sanskar Vaidya. He says you were absolutely spot on when you said how most parents always desire that their kids be rich and famous and they don't prioritize their happiness. A lot of them think that way. When they are told to think about the happiness, they'd say something like, you should be practical. How do you think we can change that?
Thank you, Sanskar, for that question. Yes, parents still say you should be practical. And I think you should be, because that's what the parents want. They want practicality for themselves through you. They don't want practicality for you. They want it for themselves through you. I think we don't have to change that. We just have to negotiate with it to find space for ourselves. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Still 5 years ago, my parents, every time I came back home to Dehradun, would tell me the new bank form that released, the position open in ONGC, to apply to IMA. And it all came from the need that they saw a sense of security in my work, in those job roles. What I actually translated that as was they were not happy with what I was doing. When I understood that what they wanted was me to be secure, and then them to feel that I was secure enough to bring them security, they would allow me to be me. And so when I discussed with them everything I did in life, writing songs, Project Fuel, the money it brought, the time investment it took, the places I hope to take it, they were actually very okay with it. They didn't want me to sit behind a desk and do a job, in that sense. We expect our parents to change without explaining to them what is better. When I was in Dehradun growing up, my parents had already paid 70,000 rupees in a coaching institute for me to do IIT JEE preparation. And I did that for 2 years. When I gave my IIT, it was so bad that I knew I didn't want to do that. I wanted to write and speak. That I convinced my parents for 3 weeks, just nights after nights, that they should let me do mass communication. They didn't allow. And it was only in the 2.5 week when my sister came back from her holiday, she said, have you told them what mass communication is? And I said, no. And she said, that's where the problem lies. And they were convinced that very night because they were able to understand. So when we expect our parents to change, we hope to make that change or that negotiation by giving them the full information as we understand it. The trouble is, most people our age don't have the patience to do that. We think वो कौन बनेगा करोड़पति का case हो जाएगा. You give one information, they'll ask you a question, and you will spend just a year answering their questions. But if we have the patience and the bandwidth for it, I think we can negotiate better. If you want to change your parents, good luck. never happens.
Okay, so I'll take up Madhulika's question. She asked, I published my first book in 2019 and people criticize me that I am too young to be out there. How can my story impact others? Was the biggest question. How can I overcome such phase?
Wow, Madhulika, I would say, I'm assuming you're a young person. So I would say that people often mistake age of a person with the age of the idea. Ideas don't have age, people do. And so if I have a great idea at 14, it shouldn't be discredited because I'm not 40 years old to say it. One of the things I realized with this, with my own journey, was that the myth that I wanted to bust was that you get wise as you get older. I've taught and met people 108 and rolled my eyes and thought, oh my God, really? That's what you learned at 108? So much of bias and prejudice. And I've met 5-year-olds. A 5-year-old girl once said to me, when you're done using the jar, remember to close the lid. That's my life lesson. I think it's as amazing as an 80-year-old person's life lesson because it's practical in the sense of its usability and its metaphor. To you, I would say, perform more. If people are offended or obtrused by your age, go out there and make it more apparent for them to see a young person talking. We have so many open mics these days. We have YouTube, we have social media platforms, we have things like your community circles, poetry jam sessions. Go there and represent a young person, and that would change everything. Because that's the first step to what you want to solve. If you want your story to impact others, you have to be willing to be seen in circles where people will make you uncomfortable, but you will still be seen because you have something to say. Last year, November, Project Fuel won an award in Germany at the Berlin Science Week for digital innovation and digital science. There were 10 winners to be chosen from 900 people. And the other 9 people that won along with Project Fuel, all 9 of them were from Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Cornell, ASU, and many others. And when the award ceremony took place and I was in that room, I was the only person who doesn't have a PhD yet. And I was, to be very honest with you, I was very uncomfortable because I thought everybody has a doctor in front of their name. And they're going to, at some point, ask a question that I'll not have an answer to. But as I, lived through a 4-hour award ceremony, I realized there is nothing that stops you from sharing what you know. What they share is what they know. And hopefully you know better one day. But that doesn't discount what you know. I know exactly what it means to be a 29-year-old and write 2 books. And no 61-year-old professor from Yale can tell me and talk about my experience for me, because he's 61 and a double, research holder. So he talks about his experience and I talk about mine. And when you're comfortable with that uncertainty, you will be at home, no matter where you are.
Well, now we have come to the end of today's session. And I hope you all enjoyed the conversation and found much to ponder over. And I would like to thank Prabha Khaitan Foundation for curating these literary events that intellectually stimulate and mentally rejuvenate us, even during these trying times that our country and world is witnessing today. Sri Simmons Limited plays a pivotal role in promoting our social literary traditions nationwide. And then there is Team Hayat and Harkaran sir. We at SRs thank you for your presence. I must extend a heartfelt thank to Deepak for his benign company and for sharing his so many versatile experiences with us this evening. And on behalf of SRs Women, Raipur, I would like to thank Vibhuti for her admirable efforts in moderating today's session. I must express my deep gratitude for our ever interactive and rapt audience. There's this thing. So we did promise you a book of Deepaks, but this time I'd like to convey my sincerest apologies. And I'd like to inform you that we won't be able to deliver on that promise because of the extreme COVID wave that is going around. And today's session has been a real treat. Until next time.
Yes, thank you so much, everybody. And thank you, Vibhuti, for your wonderful questions. It was really a pleasure speaking with you and everybody who joined in. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Deepak. Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye.
Take care. Bye.